You ready to talk about blockchain?
Yeah.
So who has actually heard about blockchain before attending the session? Okay, so we have about a third of the room. Who wants to try to explain what blockchain is for those of you who raise your hand really quickly? Just so I get a sense of where you guys are in your perception of the technology. Do this before we start. No volunteers? You don't count. You do not count. We have a gentleman in the back. Yeah, you go ahead.
So, for the way I understand blockchain, it was originally created as a new means of finance, basically, where it's a higher level of encryption. It creates certain data that's created that is hard to track. And so it's very general explanation. When I understood blockchain was connected to a lot of Bitcoin.
Okay, that's a good. Anyone else want to try? Go ahead.
Blockchain verification transactions.
I like that one. Can we get the slides up, please? Great. So, in a nutshell, blockchain was created about 10 years ago in 2009. Actually, it was not. It was created about 30 years ago. It's been an ongoing development technology that has been, in research for about 30 years. Prior to that, about 15 years ago, there was a big breakthrough in the technology where the first use case for payments and financials arose that allowed for this ledger technology to be able to solve the question of double spend. So if I have $10 and I want to give it to my grandmother, I would be able to do so using cryptography, and I would actually have that $10 leave my wallet, reside in her wallet, without this issue of $10 existing in my wallet and $10 existing in her wallet. And this is what's going to be our future when we think about technology, data, transactions. So a little bit about myself. How did I get into blockchain? I basically kind of fell into it. I had no intention of building a blockchain company. My background is in healthcare and health IT. I grew up in the Bronx, went to Cornell, studied pre-med, and ended up going to business school for healthcare management, where I did health IT consulting. Ended up in digital healthcare startups, the first one working with a telemedicine company, which telemedicine for you folks is the way we can treat medicine using digital technologies, predominantly video and text messaging. And I saw where healthcare was going and that telemedicine didn't break through. We didn't see a lot of successful companies in the space because of the lack of access to information. I ended up starting Patientory in 2015 with the goal of being able to empower patients, especially coming from New York City. Now I reside in Atlanta. Atlanta has one of the highest populations of chronically ill diseases, predominantly diabetes. So I wanted to create a solution that would empower patients with their information to be able to take better care of themselves. Fast forward in my exploration of this, came across people who were actually studying blockchain at the time and realized that, okay, this is the way we are going to begin to start to handle data across industries. Governments all over the world, especially emerging countries, have already put into place blockchain initiatives. Dubai was actually the first government to put in a blockchain smart city initiative by 2020. And we have smaller countries like Estonia, which was the first country to actually have their entire population. It's a small country, about 2.5 million people, have their entire records and citizenships using a blockchain registry. So my goals for this session, as you guys walk away, is to be able to understand the technology and where it's headed, how it's going to affect how we do work in the future, but also be able to provide ideas and opportunities. So do we have any business owners in the audience? Great. Anyone looking to go into entrepreneurship or start their own business? Okay, that's good. It's never too late, by the way. All right. So why blockchain? Why is this technology, which was introduced first with Bitcoin, we've all heard of Bitcoin, the digital currency, so important? In 2016, the World Economic Forum coined the term the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So if you didn't know, we are currently in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the one thing driving that is big data. So it's going to be the way that businesses, governments, corporations are able to accumulate information about its citizens, individuals, and processes to better maximize their decision-making process. And blockchain is, I would say, one of the infrastructure technologies that's going to assist as we move into the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Here's a quick video that I have on that. Great. So today, we have mapped over 43 different use cases that blockchain currently touches. It stems from the automotive industry, where we're able to track truth, full history of vehicle from production to sale, and supply chain parts and management. We have the banking industry, where blockchain is used to streamline payments processing and fast and secure payment transactions. We have the education industry. We're able to verify academic. Yes. Oh, you're coming in. Education credentials. We have government and voting, where blockchain is used to reduce voter fraud and also identity validation. Just a quick side note, we're actually partnered with a company that currently uses blockchain to verify Syrian refugees. So they have no identity, they travel with no information. They're able to scan use of their iris and use blockchain to be able to store and track that identity verification. And then use cases like gun safety. So from tracking gun ownership, any guns that has been in production, to tracking criminal ID history and attempts to purchase any types of weapons or guns. To date, Patientory, the company I started in the medical industry, we use blockchain to map to electronic medical record information and also be able to secure that data as we see, current EMR systems aren't as safe. So if everyone has a patient portal or use their hospital's patient portal, your health data is actually more valuable on the black market than your social security number or your credit card information. So hackers can pay up to $500,000 for someone's medical information. And there's at least a hack-in a healthcare institution at least 10 to 15 times, I would say every 3 months in the country. So we're able to use blockchain to be able to encrypt and safeguard that data, but also make it accessible to providers and physicians. So with the EMRs that are currently existent in the United States, such as Epic and Cerner, which are the largest electronic medical records and providers in the country, they don't talk to each other. So we have the issue of integrated and disparate data, especially in high chronic disease populations that see multiple providers. They don't have an accurate display of the patient's history, which can oftentimes lead to malpractice, suits, or death because of wrong diagnoses. So we're able to use blockchain to streamline that information gathering for patients. We also integrate a cryptocurrency usage into our system, which enables, again, the secure transactions for dealing with insurance claims and verifications for patients. We were also the first healthcare token in the world. So if anyone, those of you that are interested in building companies that are utilizing blockchain, they have an avenue where you can actually issue tokens for your specific use case on your company. So with that, we were able to raise over $7 million in less than 3 days to be able to build out and continue the development of the company. So with that, I wanted to be more hands-on because I know blockchain can be pretty complex, but I wanted to see you guys, the audience, have any questions on the technology, where it's headed, opportunities, and how you can get involved.
I don't know that much about blockchain. I know it's a couple questions in here.
Yeah.
I can start with the first one if no one else has one.
Hello, my name is Sonia Gilliard. First, congratulations on your raise for $3 million in 7 days. That's impressive.
$7 million in 3 days.
Oh, $7 million in 3 days. I stand corrected. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the level of hacking that happens right now, and with the current systems and how you're able to counter that using blockchain, I'm curious about the, you said the token, so it's a Ethereum platform that you're building?
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure what platform you were.
We do use a modified Ethereum. There are about, I would say, 8 different platforms and more that are growing. Ethereum and the Hyperledger platform are the largest, where most companies and startups are building on. There are other architecture, infrastructure, blockchain layers such as Corda, R3. So it depends on your level of, I would say, faith and trust in these different platforms, because at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to who has the most adoption. And if you're doing business, you're going to want to be on a platform where your customers are also using it to be able to do transactions. You had a follow-up? Yes, so we actually just partnered with, so Consensus is part of our program. So Oregon just launched an initiative last month, the Oregon Enterprise Blockchain Venture Studio, where they want to be the first state to be able to, implement different use cases in the state for blockchain. So we're one of the 6 companies for their healthcare use cases. We also have Consensus, Moda Health, the Oregon Health Sciences University, Portland State University, who's part of that initiative, to be able to roll out like our company's solution into the state. But yes, I am very familiar with Consensus. I just came back from Israel from their summit on Sunday.
What is your opinion of private versus public?
So for healthcare, we definitely use a private blockchain network because of HIPAA regulations and privacy concerns. GDPR, which is also another privacy concern based out of UK. So when it comes to sensitive information like patient data, we employ a private network. Whereas public, you see it more in, I would say, finance transaction, and if you want to add anything, please do. Ethereum runs a public network for their Ether token. So you're able to verify that those transactions happened because of those participants that are on the network.
I want to give the room a bit of background on the question he just asked. He asked about private versus public blockchain, if you don't mind.
Yep, go ahead.
So the difference is public blockchain is what you're familiar with Bitcoin. That's an application that you can see publicly. You can see the whole chain and everything that happened on it. That is a public chain. A private chain is a chain that, say for instance, I have a gentleman here who's president of Urban League's name's Kobla. If me and him were to do business, he would have to know I'm me, and I would have to know he's him. There can't be anonymousness on that blockchain. But we want to make sure our transactions are safe, so we still need the blockchain, even though we don't need anonymousness on that blockchain. That makes sense? So when we're talking public versus private, she needs private because she's dealing with private health data. And that's the nature of the question. So I want to make sure the background was there for those who are less technical.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Is mining private?
So there, we don't use mining in private because we don't have a public community to be able to do that. So usually mining is done for the verification purpose. We use a consensus mechanism, yeah, and mining is another form of consensus, but within a private network, we have different enterprise groups that are, they run a script, they press a button, and they say, I verify this transaction, rather than using energy. So if anyone doesn't know, mining is where we basically use an energy to be able to verify the transactions on the blockchain network. And I think that's the simplest way to put it.
Do we have time for?
Oh, we have a lot of time.
So we have a question on the side.
So you guys I've thrown out a lot of acronyms. I've gone over my head, honestly, but
please let me know. It's not by intent.
No, that's okay. But my real question is, what if you're just a mom and pop? You own a gas station or you own a mechanic shop.
Yeah.
How do you implement what is your process to actually implement it? And who do I call? I mean, obviously I have no technological background. If I own one of those, what would
so in Atlanta, actually, a local barber shop, which is owned by a black man. He was the first barber and actually one of the first retail stores to take payments using cryptocurrency. So you can see how it scales down to retail, you're more a transaction-based service. So there are companies out there, such as PayPal, ISP service providers, where it allows you to be able to transact in cryptocurrency, which a lot of the times cuts down on the third-party processing fees from a third party like PayPal or a bank. So it gets rid of that middle person. So if you go in for a $25, $30 haircut, you have a cryptocurrency wallet, you're able to accept payments that way from customers. So I would say that's one of the earliest and the most easy, and it really where we see most adoption today in terms of businesses being able to accept those types of forms of payment. It depends on what wallet you use. Coinbase is the biggest and most popular in the US today. I think they only accept 5 types of currencies now, So it's easy to be able to switch between those currencies that they offer.
Can I give the audience another point of information? We're talking about two different things right now. So the analogy I use to educate about blockchain is you have the internet and you have email. Email is an application that the internet can do, but the internet can do way more than email, even though email is very important. Right now, cryptocurrency is an application of blockchain. Blockchain can do a lot more than just cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is a really good use of blockchain right now. So when you think of blockchain, understand the difference. One is like email and the internet. The internet's capable of much more. Blockchain's capable of much more. She's doing a very innovative use of blockchain right now that I've never heard of anyone else doing. So that's why where she's taking the technology is a different direction. So I want folks to see crypto is not blockchain. They are very different things. One's a use of the other.
So if you go back to this map that I showed, it's basically by industry. So payments with the cryptocurrency is how you're able to utilize blockchain to move money in a digital way. It's digital currency back and forth. So the financial industry is way ahead of these other industries that I mentioned in the adoption of blockchain, if that makes sense. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. You dropped kind of a bomb in your presentation that I wanted to kind of help ask a question about, so hopefully people can understand. You said that hackers are out for people's healthcare data more so than some of their financial data. Why is that?
Good question. So, and it's really a gray area, but it's more ripe with, again, going back to identity theft. We have a lot of opioids, drug purchases on the black market as well. So it's a whole market for a lot of what goes on in that arena. Yeah.
My question is on data and privacy and record access. If you have like machine learning and you teach your machine very well, like deep learning, in terms of accessing custom medical data, if we do the same in terms of blockchain, teaching a machine exactly how to access data, is it encryptable? Like, can it be penetrated, like with blockchain?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. So if we use blockchain, can we still use it with machine learning and deep learning?
It's opposite. If blockchain is almost like blockchain versus deep machine learning.
So they're two different. So blockchain is more of a ledger. It's more type of a database. So our application, we have an app for patients, consumers. So you log in, you create a digital wallet. You can integrate and store, your data from Fitbit or your Apple Watch. So blockchain is the way that, your information is tied to your private key, and you also are able to give us access to your data so that we can actually perform algorithms or deep learning mechanisms to help you better find out, how you can improve your health. So think of it more as when we go back to big data, think of it more as this global worldwide ledger where we're beginning to create a file storage system of information to make it easier accessible. Easily accessible, yep. So a question that we didn't address is blockchain safe. So a developer made a great analogy on a panel I was on recently. He said blockchain, to really decrypt it or try to hack it would take the energy of about 20 suns. The hacking that we hear of today regarding cryptocurrencies or just ledgers are actual programs that are built on top of the ledgers and blockchain, and that's where we see a lot of those hacks occurring because the technology is still in its early state. But other than that, it's pretty safe to use. We also see most of the early adopters in this space were those people who tried to launder money. So we see Bitcoin back in about 2009, 2010, really, created a bad name for itself because of who used the technology. However, they say with any good technology, you have a good use and you have a bad use. So like the internet, when it first was introduced back in the early 90s, it was mostly used for, again, criminal activities. Go ahead.
There's a question across the room. We have time for 2 more after this.
Thank you for your presentation. So blockchain solves a problem of you have parties on a network and they're interacting, they're carrying out transactions, and it solves the problem of trust when none of the parties on the network are necessarily trustworthy. Are there other ledger or ledger-like technologies that are coping with the other limitation with blockchain-like technologies? One, it's very energy intensive, and that the transaction throughput, the transactions per second or per unit time are very low. Are there technologies in the pipeline or that you're seeing that have a high transaction throughput per watt? And is your system kind of set up in a way in which you could switch to those technologies as they come online?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got your question. So your question is, are there any other types of blockchains that offer...
that have trustedness approaching blockchain, but are also energy efficient?
Energy efficient. So as I mentioned, there are about 8 to 10 different types of ledgers that are out there now, and people continue to create new ones and say their blockchains are faster. We're still at the, I would say, V1 of that, and I think with Ethereum, they have the largest developer community. So using their technology, we're able to update as scale-in happens. I know Hedera Hashgraph is currently one in the industry now that probably has the highest rate of performance in terms of transactions, but you're able to evolve. So it's like the internet and dial-up. You remember you had to plug in the jack and to get internet. Now we're talking about 5G technology. So it's the ability to build a technology, or even in tech, when you think about product development, the ability to not only build lean, but be flexible in the architecture of your system for growth.
Hello. So I'm not a tech person. So I'm just wondering, you said like these blockchains excel based off like the adoption of them, who actually uses them. Mm-hmm. So what happens to a blockchain that doesn't excel? Like, where does that information go? Because you said it's very safe, that it doesn't really get hacked into, but so if I put my information in one of these systems, that company disappears, where's my information go, or that money that I collected from that cryptocurrency go?
Yeah, so it's, before, I would say 18 months ago, it was really like the wild, wild west. So I'll start with cryptocurrencies first. Not all cryptocurrencies are going to be successful, and we see it now. So 18 months ago, we had Bitcoin and Ethereum, which went up to $20,000 in dollars. So I don't know if anyone at Christmas was like buying Bitcoin. We heard it all over the radio, buy Bitcoin, and then it plummeted. So people actually who bought at $18,000, $19,000 at that price lost 90% of their value when they bought that. So you have to be comfortable and also do your research on the companies that you might invest crypto in and look at its users and its use case. On the other hand, if you're using a company that has a blockchain network, and you're putting in sensitive information in there, you definitely have to read their privacy policy and their terms of service to know that when you say, I don't want to be a customer anymore, that information is wiped from the database, right? Not that it's going to be wiped from the transaction, or the fact that the data was there is going to be wiped from the blockchain because it's not able to be changed, but it should be able to be wiped from the blockchain. And that falls along the lines of GDPR. And a lot of the privacy concerns that we have today regarding consumer data.
We're going to take our last question right here before we move forward. And keep in mind, afterwards, we still have the networking reception. So if you have more questions, hopefully she has the time to hang out with us for a little while.
Yeah.
So you had said earlier that you went from, I think if I remember correctly, it was digital health and starting a blockchain business. I was wondering if you could, speak a little bit about the process you went from going from something that you knew to something that was fairly new that you probably had to educate yourself on, ramp yourself up to actually start the business. If you can maybe talk a little bit about that process. Maybe there was some books or people that you spoke to about it, or maybe you just Googled it and figured everything out. Just wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I know. It's a great question. I actually just finished writing a book that hopefully comes out next October about that. Great. So I think the first step, anyone who starts a business, I think it's getting the right advisors and just sound advice. So I had done a couple of accelerators. So when you join these accelerators or incubators, they actually invest. They can be anywhere from $5K. Other accelerators invest $250,000 into entrepreneurs that they feel has a valid business solution to a problem that they're solving. And through that experience, you get about, I would say, 10 to 12 weeks of mentorship, product exploration. I know Mr. McFarland on the panel said, when he was starting his business, he went and talked to customers. And within these programs, they frame that model within this short, intensive week where you're validating the business. So while I had the original business plan for the company, I was speaking with people in the hospitals. I was speaking to people at universities who were doing active research on this, economics, speaking to product marketing individuals, and never stop. So in that role of a startup and a tech company, you're always validating the business. You're always meeting and networking and speaking to people. So that was basically my process for about, I would say, 15 months. I moved from Atlanta to Colorado for 3 months to go through a program. Then I moved from Colorado to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, for like another month, and then moved back. And now with this Oregon program, so it's like you're always talking to people. So one of our advisors, he was actually one of the first companies to actually build a distributed storage blockchain company. They were actually born out of Ethereum. So one of the Ethereum co-founders also contributed research to what they're doing. And I was able to have him as an advisor to help formulate the technology.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for Ms. Kristen McFarland.